If you're a tennis fan or even a Black history buff, you know all about the legends of Arthur Ashe and Althea Gibson. Ms. Gibson became the first Black player to win at Wimbledon in 1957. That same year, she was also named the Associated Press Female Athlete of the Year. Ashe took the U.S. men's clay court title in 1967 and the U.S. men's singles title in 1968. That year, he also won the U.S. Open title, becoming the top-ranked player in the U.S. Lawn Tennis Association. But do you know that both Ashe and Gibson, you might say, came from the same whirlwind? A man with his own clay court in Lynchburg, Virginia, who has to be one of the greatest but least known pioneers of sports. This program is about the early years of tennis from a different perspective. My guest is sports writer Doug Smith. Doug Smith is a professor of journalism at Hampton University and the author of Whirlwind, the godfather of Black tennis. Welcome, sir, to the program.
Glad to be here.
I want to tell you I greatly enjoyed your book and learned a lot. And I will also confess I'm not a tennis fan, but I think your book has moved me toward becoming one. At least that era that I found so exciting that you chronicled in Whirlwind. Let me begin with the name of the book. I had no idea when I saw the jacket Whirlwind what it meant. Help us understand what the title Whirlwind means.
Dr. Johnson was a pretty good football player as well.
Dr.
Robert Walter Johnson.
Robert Walter Johnson.
Right.
Okay.
And he attended Lincoln University, and he was a great football player. He used to score 8 touchdowns in one game. In one game, I think it was against West Virginia State, wearing a helmet was optional during that time. So he didn't have a helmet on, and he had this long hair, and he used to fly all around when he ran through the lines. And his teammates said he looked like a whirlwind, and the newspapers the next day said Whirlwind Johnson ran through the line. So that's the title that stuck with him throughout his life. Now, these are Black colleges,
yes.
Lincoln and West Virginia State College. And then he went on to medical school at Howard? Meharry. And he graduated from Meharry, became a doctor, and then settled in Lynchburg, Virginia. Right. And then what did he do? Well, he decided that he still needed to get regular exercise, and he wasn't able to play. He played football almost through his mid-20s, but he decided that he needed some other outlet, and he chose tennis. He found that it would relieve the stress associated with being a physician. So he built a tennis court in his backyard. One day in June of 1950, he was on a trip from Washington, D.C. to Lynchburg and stopped in Charlottesville when he saw a sign that indicated there was a high school interscholastic tennis championships going on. These were all white players. And he looked at them and he just marveled at the way they could play. He couldn't touch them, he knew that. But he felt that he wanted to have an opportunity for blacks that same age to get that exposure to be able to play against this caliber. He went to the tournament director, Ted Penzol at the time, and asked if he could invite players to come. Even though racial segregation was the law of the land at that time, he said, get me 2 good players and I'll let you play in this event. So he chose 2 high school players from Lynchburg High School at the time, Dunbar.
Dunbar was a high school.
Dunbar was a high school.
In Lynchburg.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And they played in that event, and they were wiped up, 6-love, 6-love. There was no hope. So he was embarrassed.
This was
1950.
50.
Yeah. He was, no, 51, because he stopped there in 1950, and the next year he was able to go back in 51. So the tournament director, Penzol, said, look, start a camp, get your best players from across the country, and then the level of play will be greater. So he decided to do that. And his goal at that time was to get a young black player to win that title. That's the Interscholastic Championships. And sure enough, after many years, Arthur Ashe won it in 1961. Arthur Ashe won in 1961. Now, what was the relationship between 51 and 61 and Arthur Ashe and Dr. Johnson?
The main thing is that Johnson quickly understood that he's not going to win this with 17 and 18-year-olds. He had to start them younger. Ronald Charity, who lived in Richmond at the time, found this kid who was 10 years old at the time, and invited him to Johnson's house. Johnson saw him, thought he was a little too small, but decided to keep him coming back every summer. So by the time he got to be 14, he was clearly one of the best players, not only...
Now, he started coming at what age?
11.
11?
Yes.
Okay. And he kept coming until he was... all right, now that's Arthur Ashe.
That's Arthur Ashe.
All right, now we've got a photograph here of Arthur Ashe, who at age 12.
Right.
So this is pretty much what Arthur Ashe looked like when he started training under Dr. Johnson. Am I correct?
That's correct.
In Lynchburg, behind the house,
yes,
on the clay tennis court,
yes,
of Dr. Johnson.
Every summer.
Every summer. All right. Now, we keep going with Arthur Ashe, and we have another photograph provided by you of Arthur Ashe. Now, in this picture, how old was he?
No, this is Althea Gibson and Dr. Johnson.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, no, we'll look at that in a minute. All right, now, let's go back to Arthur Ashe. Did you ever meet Arthur Ashe?
Yes, I did. I attended high school in Phoenix High School in Hampton, Virginia. In fact, I have a great time telling my students at Hampton that I was born in the building next to the School of Communications. It's called the Queen's Honor Hall now, but at that time it was Dixie Hospital. So that's my home. Hampton is my home.
So your high school, Phoenix High School, was on the campus. Was it Hampton University at that time?
Hampton Institute.
It was Hampton Institute at that time. All right, now, so you went to high school at Phoenix?
Yes.
Okay, now tell me about you and Arthur Ashe.
Well, my basketball coach decided that I should play tennis as well. I was pretty good in basketball. But I didn't want to play tennis. I wanted to play baseball or something else because I was a sissy sport. I finally got out there and played tennis, and I enjoyed it. I was a sophomore at the time, my first year. And the fellow who was the captain of our team, Billy Nielsen, used to say, you know, you're a pretty good player, but next year there's a kid from Richmond who's going to be kicking your butt all the time.